The film begins with Millie arriving at Andrew Winchester's house, where she meets Nenah, Andrew's wife, who receives her very warmly and welcomes her. She says to her, "It says on your resume that you graduated from university with excellent grades, and you could find a much better job, so what makes you want to work as a house manager?" Millie tells her that she loves cooking and children, and that is why she decided to work as a house manager. At that point, Nenah shows her a picture of her daughter, Cece, and tells her that she is a very special child. After that, she shows her the house and says to her, "My husband, Andrew, designed the house himself, even though he is not an interior designer. He inherited the management of a software company from his father, but he is obsessed with order and organization." Then she shows her Cece's bedroom in her own room, and tells her that she is pregnant in the first months, and that is why she needs a housekeeper to help her. She also tells her that her husband does not know about her pregnancy yet. Then she lets her know that she is still conducting interviews for now, and if she decides on her, she will call her. She gives her $20 and tells her that this amount is because she made the effort and came all the way there. When Millie leaves, she says to herself that she is sure Nenah definitely will not call her, because she will discover that her resume is fake. Here, we find out that Millie does not have a home to live in and that she is living in her car, because she is currently serving a 5-year probation sentence, and we will later find out why she went to prison. Anyway, the next morning she wakes up inside her car to the sound of an officer telling her that sleeping there is not allowed. At the same time, she gets a call from Nenah, who tells her that she wants her to start working for her that very day. So she goes to Nenah's house, where she finds the place in a terrible state of mess, and Nenah takes the bags from her and tells her that she is busy writing the speech she is going to give at the parents' council at her daughter's school, then leaves her and goes to her room. Later that same night, Andrew and Cece return home, and at that point Nenah introduces Millie to Andrew and tells him that she hired her to help her with the housework. Here, it is obvious that Andrew is surprised, but he does not comment on it and instead welcomes Millie. When Millie finishes her work, she goes up to her room, where she notices that the door has no key, in addition to the fact that the room has nothing but a very small sealed glass window that does not open. So she asks Nenah to bring her a key for the door and to open the window. Nenah tells her that she will call a specialist to come and open the window glass, and that she will also have a key made for the door. Then she gives her a phone and tells her that she linked it to her bank card so that she can buy the household needs freely, and at that point Millie thanks her because her own phone had been very old. The next morning, Millie is shocked to find Nenah smashing everything in the kitchen, and she says to her, "Where did you put the paper I wrote my speech on?" Millie tells her, "I did not see it," so she becomes even angrier with her and screams in her face, saying, "You are a liar. I know you are the one who lost it. Bring it out, or I will fire you." At that moment, Andrew arrives, and when he hears what Nenah is saying, he calms her down and tells her that the speech she wrote is on the laptop and that they can print it again. She thanks him and apologizes to him for her temper, then leaves them and goes to the office room. Meanwhile, Andrew apologizes to Millie and offers to help her clean, but she tells him, "I will clean everything," so he thanks her again and then goes to Nenah. From that day on, Millie becomes certain that Nenah is mentally ill, and she feels sorry for Andrew, because he is rich and handsome and deserves a much better woman than Nenah. Anyway, she goes out to throw away the trash, and there she sees Enzo, the gardener, who says to her, "What are you doing here?" She tells him, "I work here." At that moment, Enzo sees Nenah watching them, so he says to Millie, "Your place is not here," then leaves her and walks away. Later that same night, Millie brings dinner to Andrew and Cece, and at that time Andrew tells her that Nenah is sick and will not be having dinner, then asks her to sit and eat dinner with them, but she refuses and tells him, "I ate a little while ago." That same night, she dreams that Andrew is getting close to her, so she wakes up startled and tries to push the thought out of her head. In the morning, Nenah gives her a key and says to her, "This is the key to your room." The next day is Saturday, which is Millie's day off, and while she is getting ready to leave, Nenah stops her and says to her, "You are not taking a day off today. I need you in the house." Millie tells her, "That will not work. I have an important errand." But Nenah insists on her position, and at that point Andrew steps in and allows Millie to go out. A little later, Millie arrives at her probation officer, and when the officer finds out that Millie now has a job and a place to stay, she tells her, "This is very good, because one of the conditions for your probation to continue is that you must be able to find a job and housing, so you have to hold on to this job very tightly." The next day, Andrew's mother arrives at the house, and it is very clear that she is a very sharp and harsh woman. She gives Nenah some ceramic dishes and says to her, "Take good care of them, because this is a family heirloom, and every mother in our family passes them down to her son's wife." When she sees Millie, she says to Nenah, "How can you let your daughter's nanny wear such revealing clothes?" At that point, Nenah controls her nerves and changes the subject. Later that same night, Millie suffers from insomnia and cannot sleep, so she goes downstairs to watch television. After a little while, Andrew also comes downstairs to watch television, and when Millie apologizes to him, he tells her there is no need to apologize, then sits down to watch with her. While that is happening, Nenah sees them, so she asks Andrew to go ahead to their room first, and then she says to Millie, "Don't you dare think about getting close to my husband. Give me the phone. You're fired." At that point, Millie keeps apologizing to her and says, "Please, give me another chance. I need this job." So Nenah tells her, "I'll give you 1 week only, but on one condition. After that, I do not want to see you inside the house except in modest clothes, and you are to stay away from my husband." So she tells her, "Okay." The next day, Nenah invites her friends over to the house, and Millie prepares tea for them. During that time, Nenah gets up and leaves them for a little while, and at that point Millie overhears them talking about Nenah. One of them says that Nenah spent 9 months in a mental institution, and that handsome Andrew is suffering with her, because he is handsome and rich, and 1,000 women would want him, and that if he ever left Nenah, she would be thrown out onto the street because she is poor and has no one. In addition to that, she would never be able to get pregnant because of problems with her eggs, which she had told them about. Even so, poor Andrew still puts up with her. Then Nenah comes back to them, and when she finds Millie standing at the door, she says to her, "Don't try to eavesdrop on what we are saying. Serve the tea and go back to the kitchen quickly." So she does what she asked of her while she is shocked by what she heard about Nenah. The next day, Nenah goes out with Andrew, and at that point Millie searches through the medicine cabinet in the bathroom, where she finds antipsychotic medication inside. At that moment, she becomes afraid, so she calls one of her friends and asks her to look for any job for her, because she is going to leave the job she is currently working in. That same night, she hears the sound of an argument and the sound of a heavy object hitting the floor, so she follows the source of the noise until she reaches Nenah and Andrew's room. There, she knocks on the door, and Nenah opens it while holding a piece of glass in her hand with blood on it. Millie becomes afraid for Andrew and keeps calling out to him, until Andrew appears and shuts the door in her face. In the morning, Nenah gives her one of her dresses and says to her, "This is a gift from me to you." Then she asks her to book 2 theater tickets for the weekend for her and Andrew, and also to book a night at a hotel, because she intends to spend a romantic evening with Andrew away from the house over the weekend. She also asks her not to take her day off and to stay at the house with Cece until she and Andrew return, and then she asks her to go pick up Cece from ballet practice. So Millie agrees to all of her requests and goes to wait for Cece until she finishes. During that time, one of the nannies tells her that Cece's mother is mentally unstable, and that in the past she had tried to drown her daughter in the bathtub. Because Andrew had important work, he kept calling Nenah that night, and when she did not answer him, he became worried and called the police and asked them to go check on her. When they arrived at the house, they found her drowning her daughter in the bathtub, and they saved the little girl at the very last moment. Since that time, Nenah was admitted to the institution for 9 months. The next day, Millie is surprised by Nenah asking her about the theater tickets she bought, so Millie says to her, "You are the one who asked me to buy them." Nenah tells her, "That never happened, because I am going with Cece to a camp over the weekend, so how would I ask you to buy theater tickets? The cost of those tickets will be deducted from your salary." At that point, Millie breaks down and says to her, "Don't do this to me. The cost of those tickets is equal to my entire salary." But Nenah insists on her position and tells her, "If you do not pay for them, I will fire you." When Andrew arrives and learns about what happened, he asks Nenah to calm down. On Saturday, Nenah takes her daughter and they go to the camp, and Millie stays in the house alone with Andrew. At that point, Andrew offers to go with her to the theater, and she agrees. That same night, she wears the dress Nenah gave her, and they go to the theater, then have dinner together, and after that they go to the hotel and spend the night together, and a relationship happens between them. In the morning, Andrew wakes Millie and tells her that Nenah and Cece will be coming back to the house today, and that they need to be there before they arrive. And indeed, they get to the house before them and try to act normal in front of Nenah. After that, Millie prepares lunch for them, and while she is putting the food on the table, Nenah says to her, "You were in prison, weren't you?" Here, Millie is shocked, and then Nenah says to Andrew, "You definitely know that she was imprisoned for 10 years before she worked for us, don't you?" Shock appears on his face, but he does not respond. Anyway, Nenah asks Millie to take her car and go buy some things from the supermarket, so she does what she asked her to do. While she is at the supermarket, she runs into one of Nenah's friends, and when she sees the phone with Millie, she says to her, "That is Nenah's phone. Be careful, because through that phone she can see you and know where you are." At that point, Millie is shocked, because that means that Nenah found out what happened between her and Andrew. When Millie leaves the store, she is surprised by a police officer approaching her and handcuffing her, and he says to her, "Is this your car?" She tells him, no, so he tells her that Nenah Winchester, the owner of the car, reported that she stole it. Millie tries to defend herself, but he does not believe her. At that point, Andrew arrives and solves the problem, and takes Millie with him in his car. On the way back to the house, he tells her, "It is not my right to judge you for your past, and this issue of your imprisonment does not bother me." So she says to him, "Does your wife know about what happened between us?" He tells her, yes. As soon as they enter the house, Nenah greets them and says to Millie, "Take your bag of clothes and get out of here. You're fired, and I will send you back to prison again because you stole my dress." Millie tells her, "That did not happen. You are the one who gave it to me." At that point, Andrew becomes angry at Nenah and shouts in her face, saying, "Get out of my house, and I do not want to see you here again." In that moment, Millie feels that she has won over Nenah, and she says to her, "Shall I pack your clothes for you?" Nenah screams in her face, then leaves the house, gets into her car, and drives it toward the gate. On the other side, Millie tells Andrew that she will look for another job, but he tells her, "No, I want to continue my life with you, and from today, you are the lady of this house." At that point, Millie is overjoyed. From that moment on, they spend all of their time together, and Andrew is very affectionate with her, until one day, Millie wakes up before him, goes downstairs to prepare breakfast, takes out the ceramic dishes and puts the food in them, and suddenly finds Enzo standing in front of her behind the glass door. She screams, the tray falls from her hand, and the dishes break, causing Andrew to wake up to the sound. When Andrew sees his family heirloom broken, he holds his temper and asks her, "What happened?" After that, he goes upstairs to chase Enzo away. And when she apologizes to him for breaking the dishes, he tells her, "It doesn't matter, gather them into a bag. I have a friend who can restore them just as they were." So she gathers the broken pieces, puts them into a bag, and gives it to him. When he sees them, he says to her, "Why didn't you wash the broken pieces?" She tells him, "I was afraid my hand would get cut." At night, they go to spend time in the room where she used to sleep, and they drink alcoholic beverages. The next morning, when Millie wakes up, she finds herself alone in the room, and when she tries to open the door, she finds it locked on her from the outside. At that point, she thinks Andrew is joking with her, so she says to him, "Open the door for me." He replies to her from behind the door and says, "You made a mistake, and you must be punished." Here, we go back in time to the moment when Nenah approached the house gate, and at that point we see her laughing hysterically. Then we go back a little further in time, to find out that Nenah had been a single mother, and that her husband had abandoned her after the birth of their daughter. Because at that time she had been very poor, she had been forced to leave her daughter with a nanny and go work at a company. One day, she entered a board meeting, and Andrew was among those present. During that time, the chairman of the board was bullying her because of her appearance. After she finished her work, she found Andrew waiting for her, and he asked her to have dinner with him. Since Andrew was very handsome, rich, and single, it had been easy for him to lure her into his trap, and within 1 month they had gotten married. At that time, she had dyed her hair blonde during the period in which they were getting to know each other, just as he had asked her to do. He once told her that he had been engaged to a girl named Kathy, but that she had left him after only 2 weeks of engagement, and that had affected him very deeply. Anyway, the natural color of her hair roots started to show, so he asked her to go dye her roots. She agreed, but she got a little busy and delayed dyeing her hair, so he locked her inside the same room in which he later locked Millie. There was no food in the room, but there were 3 bottles of water. When she asked him to open the door for her, he refused and said to her, "First, you will do what I ask of you, and after that we will discuss the conditions of your freedom." Then he threw an envelope to her from under the door and said, "You will pluck 100 hairs from your scalp and put them inside this envelope, and if I find a single hair that was not pulled out from the root, you will do it all over again from the beginning." At that point, she was shocked and said to him, "I will not do that." But he did not respond to her and left. As that was happening, the days passed, and Nenah began to feel hungry and exhausted, so she was forced to do what he had asked of her. She plucked 100 hairs from her head, put them in the envelope, and then slid it to him from under the door. He took the envelope, but returned it to her that same night and said to her, "There is 1 hair that was not pulled out from the root. Pluck another 100 hairs, and I will come back to you tonight." So she was forced to do what he had asked of her. An hour later, he came back to her, and when he opened the door, Nenah had already lost consciousness from hunger and thirst. So he revived her and gave her a bottle of water, which she drank completely. After that, she ran out toward her daughter to make sure she was okay, and she found her fine and playing. Suddenly, she began to feel dizzy, and she realized that he had drugged her, and moments later she lost consciousness. After she regained consciousness, she ran looking for her daughter, and found her inside the bathtub between life and death. So she tried to save her, and while that was happening, the police arrived, and they thought she had been drowning her daughter, so they pulled her away from her. When she left the house with them, Andrew was pretending to cry over the little girl, but in reality he was gloating over Nenah, and he looked at her with a defiant stare. From that moment on, Nenah was admitted to the institution for 9 months, and of course none of the doctors believed what she said, and all of them diagnosed her condition as psychosis. In order to be able to get out of the hospital, she pretended that she was convinced by what they were saying, and so she was released from the hospital. Since that time, she had lived with Andrew as his wife against her will, because he could easily have sent her back to the institution again and taken her daughter away from her. In order not to have a child by him, she got a birth control device and bribed the doctor so that he would make Andrew understand that she had developed a fertility problem and would never be able to have children. All the while, Andrew had been torturing her, and the only person who believed her was Enzo, because his sister had died because of a man like Andrew. He had tried more than once to convince her to take her daughter and run away, but she used to refuse because she knew he would be able to reach her. Her only way to escape was for Andrew himself to be the one to throw her out of his life. So she came up with a plan to hire a housekeeper, and she chose a weak woman who had no other source of income, because Andrew always likes to feel that he is the one controlling the life of the woman who is with him. And indeed, her plan succeeded. Here, we return to the present time, and we see Andrew standing in front of the room door, saying to Millie, "Not only did you break my mother's dishes into 21 pieces, but you also didn't wash them, and because of this negligence you will be punished." Then he throws her, from under the door, a piece of the dish she had broken and says to her, "You will cut your stomach 21 times, and the wounds must be deep, and when you do what I asked of you, we will discuss the conditions of your freedom." At that point, Millie gets angry and says to him, "You're crazy. Of course I'm not going to do that." So he leaves her and goes away. 2 days pass, and during that time Millie remembers that she went to prison while she was in high school because of a rich and arrogant person like Andrew. Here, we go back in time to see Millie in the dormitory of the boarding school, and when she entered the room, she found a young man forcibly raping her friend, so she struck him violently on the head until he died. Because of his father's influence, she was sentenced to 10 years in prison, even though she had been defending her friend. Then we return once again to the present time, and at that point Millie begins searching the room until she finds a sharp object, so she hides it inside her clothes. After that, she cuts herself with the piece of porcelain. When she finishes, she calls out to Andrew and tells him that she did what he asked of her. When he enters the room, she stabs the sharp object into his neck, takes his phone, then runs out of the room and locks the door on him from the outside. At that point, Andrew gets angry and keeps pounding on the door, saying to her, "Open the door for me." She tells him, "When you finish your punishment, we will discuss the conditions of your freedom." Then she opens the phone and watches Andrew through the camera installed in the room and connected to the phone's camera. Anyway, she goes downstairs to eat and drink, and while she is doing that, Andrew's mother sends him a message saying, "Have you prepared the divorce papers or not yet, my handsome son with the crazy smile?" At that point, Millie searches the kitchen drawer for pliers, and when she finds them, she takes them. She also takes the rest of the porcelain set and a gallon of gasoline, then goes upstairs to Andrew, throws the pliers to him, and says to him, "Pull out your front tooth so that after this you won't be able to smile at girls and make them fall in love with you." He refuses, and at that point Millie starts smashing the rest of the porcelain set, then pours the gasoline on it. When Andrew sees the gasoline coming in from under the door, and hears her striking a match, he says to her, "Fine, I'll do what you want." And indeed, he pulls out his tooth, and Millie sees him through the phone camera. When he says to her, "Open the door for me," she refuses, goes downstairs, and leaves him there. On the other side, Nenah has told her daughter everything, and says to her, "You and I are going to run away from here." Cece tells her, "It's not right for us to run away and leave Millie. It's not her fault." So Nenah becomes convinced by her daughter's words, and at night she returns to the house to save Millie, believing that Millie is the one locked inside the room. So she opens the door, and at that point Andrew comes out and starts beating both of them. But Millie manages to push him from the second floor, and he crashes onto the foyer floor and dies. After that, Nenah says to Millie, "Run away, and I will say that he fell while he was fixing the lamp." So Millie agrees, and after a little while the police arrive. Of course, Nenah's story does not seem convincing, but by coincidence the officer investigating her is Catherine's sister, the woman who had once been engaged to Andrew. The officer says to Nenah, "My sister came to my house one day completely shattered after what Andrew did to her." Then she says to her again, "I believe your story, because anyone could fall while fixing the lamp." On the day of the funeral, Millie comes and stands from a distance, and at that point Cece runs toward her. Then Nenah goes to her, thanks her, and gives her a check for $100,000. A month later, we see Millie attending an interview for a housekeeper job with one of Nenah's friends, who says to her, "Nenah recommended you to me. Can you help me?" While that is happening, Millie notices bruises on her hands and understands that her husband beats her, so she says to her, "Of course I can help you, and I will start working today." And here the film ends.